love this next story because of how preposterous it is. So the Hill's reporting that Saudi Arabia is desperate to prove a point here to people in Washington. So they say Saudi Arabia is distributing a memo to lawmakers on Capitol Hill detailing its counterterrorism efforts in an attempt to blunt growing criticism. The 104-page document covers the country's security measures aimed at terrorists, financial measures to disrupt terrorist funding, and anti-radicalization efforts. The white paper reportedly describes Saudi Arabia as one of the leading nations in combating terrorism and terror financing, adding that it's been working closely with its allies on all fronts. This is adorable. You have the country which is probably most responsible for the spread of jihadism and Wahhabism going, us? What do you mean? No. We've been fighting terrorism all along. I don't know what you mean. Here's a pamphlet that details it. Who does that? If you have to provide a pamphlet on how you're not terrorists, chances are you're probably terrorists. What do you mean? My dick is gigantic. I don't know what you're talking about. Here's a pamphlet that describes just how big my dick is. I have testimonials from all the women I slept with, and they say, large dick. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm packing. You know what I'm saying? Who does that? Somebody who's really like, oh, God damn, this thing is small. We fight terrorism. I know we fight terrorism. Thou doth protest too much, son. Okay, where do I begin in describing how preposterous this is? So let's start with Yemen. Saudi Arabia is currently bombing the living shit out of Yemen. Over 50% of the people they're killing are civilians. They're not even trying to hit military targets. They just go, wherever we think Shia are, we're going to blow them up. We don't give a fuck about Shia. So that's what they're doing. They've gone so low that they've attacked schools for the blind. By the way, they're also using cluster bombs, which are illegal under international law, because after the fact, they can explode and kill people. And by the way, those cluster bombs, they have, places in the U.S. where they're made written on it. Great, I'm sure that's not sowing anti-Americanism all across the Middle East. So they're devastating Yemen right now. By the way, you know what else they're doing? Funding jihadist groups in Syria. They're also funding, I don't know how I missed this one too, it's not just them bombing in Yemen and massacring civilians. They're funding al-Qaeda on the ground because the Shia Houthi rebels took over the government, the Sunni government in Yemen. So they go, well, we got to find Sunnis to fight on the ground. Who are some Sunni fighters who are willing to risk their lives? Al-Qaeda. So they're funding al-Qaeda on the ground. Like I said, in Syria, they're funding ISIS and al-Nusra. Al-Nusra is al-Qaeda in Syria. They're funding jihadist elements. As they're funding jihadists, they're like, us? Support terror? No, we would never do that. And the reason they're doing this is because there's talk now about the 28 redacted pages in the 9/11 Commission report being released. Part of those 28 pages says Saudi Arabia was responsible for 9/11. Now, I don't think they go as far as say the entire government is complicit, but they do say that people within the government were directly involved in funding al-Qaeda and funding jihadists, and then that led to the attacks. And then, I haven't even brought up the fact that the whole premise of their government, their government is based on Salafi Islam, Wahhabi Islam, the most ultra-conservative right-wing interpretation of Islam imaginable. I mean, that is jihadism. So they, for example, put people to death for sorcery. They behead people. They don't just kill them, they behead them. As we say, oh my God, ISIS, savages, beheading people. One of our top allies is doing it. They're beheading people for sorcery and witchcraft and fucking drug smuggling. All atheists are called terrorists. They're considered terrorists in Saudi Arabia. They've gone so far as to ban liberal interpretations of Islam, where, there was a magazine, I'm not sure if it was Time or Newsweek or something, there was a cover that, spoke about Islam and then went into detail for potential liberal interpretations of Islam and who's fighting for it, so on and so forth. They banned the magazine. We don't allow liberal interpretations of Islam in our country. So, in every imaginable way, they're contributing to the problem. They're funding Salafi mosques all around the world. They said, okay, we're not going to take any Syrian refugees, but Let them into Europe and then we'll build Wahhabi mosques there. And now they have the nerve to hand out pamphlets. Ooh, we're fighting terrorism. No, you represent terrorism. That's what you are. You're a fucking terror state. Okay, so it's preposterous that we're still buddy-buddy with them and we hold hands and we jack them off so we can get an oil cum shot in our face. Fuck that, man. Fuck that. We got to untangle the relationship. Everybody who listens to the show, they know I'm super hard on Israel, for example. I say we need to be tough with them to get a two-state solution. We got to get peace there. Well, I feel the same way about Saudi Arabia. You got to be fucking tough with them. You got to let them know this is unacceptable. But what do? The exact opposite. Now, they head the UN Human Rights Panel. I mean, it's almost like a bad sitcom. Like, who should we, let be in charge of the Department of Morality? Is Charles Manson available? Let's get him. That'd be a good idea. Is the Zodiac Killer here? Maybe he can head the panel. That's what it's like. So spare me. Your shitty attempts to try to get us to believe that you really like us. How fucking stupid do you think we are? And by the way, everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. But the reason why we haven't sufficiently cracked down or untangled our relationship or done anything is, of course, because of the business relationships. Because in the U.S., corporate hegemony overrides everything, including our own survival.